The shrill beep of the alarm cut through the thick silence at 5:30 a.m., dragging me out of the exhausted haze I'd slipped into after another sleepless night. I shuffled into the kitchen, the clatter of cereal boxes and the faint hum of the coffee maker filling the small apartment. Mark and Sophie would be up soon, hungry and restless, needing me before the world demanded their attention. I was their shield and their world, even when it felt like I was nothing more than a shadow stretched thin across a battlefield. Teaching second grade during the day, single mother every other waking hour, I lived in the constant hum of responsibility, with no backup and no breaks. I packed lunches while scrolling through emails from the school district, lesson plans blending with reminders for doctor's appointments and soccer practices. The calendar was a battlefield map, custody exchanges penciled in, deadlines for legal filings circled in red. Linda Reed's name loomed like a dark cloud, the new wife of my ex-husband, her presence a constant threat I couldn't shake. Our last custody exchange replayed in my mind, the supermarket parking lot, his sneering words edged with thinly veiled threats, Linda standing just out of reach, her eyes cold and calculating. But beneath my exhaustion, beneath the ache in my bones, was a fierce fire. I had something powerful: records, receipts, texts, every interaction logged and time-stamped. I wasn't just surviving, I was building a case, a fortress of truth no one could tear down. For Mark and Sophie, I would fight with everything I had. 2 years ago, when the divorce papers landed on the kitchen table, I didn't know how much my world would unravel. Mark was 6, Sophie barely 3, and suddenly I was the only constant in their lives. My ex's sudden job loss had opened the door for Linda Reed, who slipped into our fractured family like a shadow, tightening her grip with every passing day. The court accepted his claims of unemployment without question, leaving me to shoulder every expense alone. Daycare cost $600 a month, school supplies, clothes, doctor visits, all paid by me, every cent painstakingly scraped together. I thought if I just kept quiet, if I held the pieces together silently, things would get better. But each custody exchange widened the chasm between us. Linda's icy glares when I arrived to pick up the kids, her ex's dismissive smirks, they were constant reminders of how little they valued my sacrifice. The unfairness stung deep, but I told myself it was temporary. My children's stability depended on me staying quiet, staying strong. I rationalized Linda's coldness, my ex's manipulation, as just part of the battle I was destined to fight. But inside, frustration simmered, a steady undercurrent beneath the daily grind. I worked extra hours at the school, volunteered on weekends, anything to keep the household afloat. Rent swallowed $200 each month, groceries $300, and the invisible hours spent managing every detail, doctors, homework, emotional breakdowns, piled up. Meanwhile, my ex had not paid a dime in child support in over 2 years. Every missed payment was recorded, backed by bank statements and court notices. Daniel Carter, my friend and legal ally, was the only person who saw the full extent of my struggle. "You have the truth on your side, Helen," he said during our last meeting, flipping through my meticulously gathered evidence, screenshots of texts, GPS logs of custody exchanges, receipts for every expense. His calm pragmatism steadied me when everything else felt like chaos. But Linda's presence at exchanges was growing more aggressive, her smirks sharp knives aimed straight at my resolve. She was a reminder that I was not just fighting my ex. I was fighting their entire strategy to control my life and silence me. That day in the grocery store parking lot seared itself into my memory. Mark and Sophie clung to me as my ex's sneer sliced through the air. "You're overreacting, as usual." Linda stood nearby, arms crossed, her mocking smile cutting like glass. When I dared to mention the unpaid child support, Linda's voice rose loud enough for nearby shoppers to hear. "Maybe if you weren't such a nag, he'd pay." Whispers spread, eyes turned, and heat flushed my cheeks. For a moment, the weight of their judgment crushed me, but I clenched my jaw, recalling Daniel's advice. "Stay calm. Don't stoop to their level." "I won't give them the satisfaction," I told myself. Still, that public humiliation planted a seed of doubt. Was this fight worth the shame? I wasn't sure yet, but beneath the sting, A quiet voice inside warned me. This was only the beginning. The moment I dared to push back, the retaliation came swift and brutal. It started almost imperceptibly. A message from an old acquaintance, a text that stung sharper than any open insult. "Helen's losing it," the words read. Always complaining, never satisfied. Within days, my phone buzzed relentlessly with similar whispers from people who once offered smiles and nods, but now exchanged curt glances when I entered a room. Then came the social media posts, vague yet venomous, painting me as unstable, as a mother who couldn't keep her own life together. My ex's texts grew colder, more condescending, accusing me of making mountains out of molehills and wrecking the kids' childhoods with my persistence. Each message was a calculated jab, designed to erode my confidence, to isolate me. At work, the atmosphere shifted. I caught the faintest murmurs behind my back, the quick closing of doors when I entered a room. One afternoon, in the teacher's lounge, I overheard a familiar voice mutter, "Always the drama with Helen." The sting wasn't just in the words, but in the way colleagues, once friendly, now treated me like a ticking time bomb. Even parents began to glance sideways, uncertain if I was the stable presence I claimed to be. The cold distance from once close relatives, some who sided with Linda, felt like betrayal carved deep into my skin. I was alone in this, the sole defender of my children's well-being, and the isolation was almost unbearable. Yet, beneath the weariness, a stubborn ember of defiance glowed. I wasn't broken. Not yet. For Mark and Sophie, I had to be unyielding, even when the world tried to convince me I was the problem. When the court proposed mediation, I saw a sliver of hope, a chance to lay everything bare and finally be heard. Sitting across from Linda and my ex in the sterile conference room, I gathered my strength and spoke calmly, listing unpaid child support that added up to $24,000, recounting custody exchanges tainted by manipulation and drain on my children's spirits. I watched as Linda cut in with sneering sarcasm, painting me as bitter and controlling, twisting my words until my efforts crumbled under the weight of their dismissal. The mediator sighed, suggesting a split custody arrangement that ignored the financial neglect, the emotional damage. Walking out of that room, I felt the suffocating grip of futility. I tried the mature way, I whispered to myself, but it only made things worse. The system was deaf to my truth, blind to the sacrifices I made. My children's future was tangled in a battle I couldn't win by simply asking for fairness. Then came the humiliation I never expected, right where I least needed it. At a school event, surrounded by parents and teachers, Linda cornered me. Her words cut through the chatter. "You're alienating the kids, using them as pawns." Heads nodded. Whispers spread like wildfire, and I saw the principal avert his gaze, his distance a silent judgment. Mark, standing close by, caught a classmate's teasing about Mom's big fight, and I saw the hurt flicker in his eyes, a pain I couldn't shield him from. My professional reputation, painstakingly built over years, felt like it was unraveling thread by thread. The weight of social scorn bore down on me, but I stood firm, swallowing the bitterness that threatened to spill. Inside, though, the burden grew heavier, the loneliness more suffocating. This wasn't just a custody battle anymore. It was a war for my dignity and my family's soul. Desperation forced me to one last attempt at peace. I called a family meeting, voice steady, though my heart pounded like a drum. I proposed joint counseling for the kids, a clear payment schedule, a way to put aside grudges for their sake. For a moment, I almost believed in the possibility of compromise, but Linda's smirk shattered that fragile hope. "You want money? Then play by our rules," she sneered, and my ex's refusal to commit was cold and absolute. The line was crossed. No more pretending goodwill existed where there was only control and cruelty. The children's stability, their innocence, hung by a thread I no longer knew how to hold. I realized then that my fight couldn't be about peace anymore. It had to be about survival. For Mark, for Sophie, I would find the strength to wield whatever weapons I had, no matter how dark the battle ahead. The last thread of hope snapped during the final hearing when my ex hit back with a counter motion accusing me of neglect. I sat in that sterile courtroom, clutching my notes, watching as Linda's family unleashed a storm of defamatory posts online. The venom spread fast. Accusations of me being an unfit mother, of fabricating stories for sympathy. Daniel's voice on the phone was grim. "Helen, you're running out of allies. Even some people you thought were neutral are turning away." At school, the cold shoulders sliced sharper than any legal blow. Whispers followed me down the hallways, eyes averted. One teacher who once greeted me warmly now barely nodded, and parents exchanged knowing looks when Mark and Sophie trailed behind me. Their anxiety grew palpable. Mark's protective silence and Sophie's quick tears betrayed the pressure they felt. I wanted to scream that I was doing everything alone, raising 2 kids, managing a classroom of eager little faces, fighting in courtrooms that seemed deaf to my truth. Yet deep inside, a suffocating doubt crept in. "Maybe I'm the problem," I whispered one sleepless night, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. The loneliness was crushing. No one to catch me when I stumbled. No shoulder to lean on after a day spent juggling school, bills, and broken promises. My ex and Linda's relentless attacks felt like a siege, and I was holding a fortress with crumbling walls. Mark needed stability. Sophie needed her mother whole, not fractured by constant battles. But how could I be strong when every step forward felt like sinking deeper into quicksand? The nights were the worst, when children finally slept, and the silence pressed down on me like a weight. I scrolled through social media, confronting the lies spun about me, the carefully crafted image Linda and my ex maintained. Each comment was a blade, each share a public shaming. I had always tried to be the bigger person, to shield Mark and Sophie from the ugliness, but that night, the mask slipped. I was exhausted beyond words. A single mother fighting a war alone, with no end in sight. The question echoed relentlessly in my mind. How did it come to this? I had given everything, yet here I was, broken and isolated, doubting my every move. The fortress was falling, and I was standing inside it, defenseless. The crushing blow came unexpectedly during a custody exchange in the crowded parking lot near the grocery store. My ex pulled up late, impatient and irritable as always. When I asked quietly but firmly about the missed child support payments again, his mask shattered. "You're a desperate, controlling witch," he spat, loud enough for bystanders to hear, his voice dripping with venom. Linda, lurking nearby, pulled out her phone and began silently filming me, her smirk a dagger to my already frayed nerves. That night, she uploaded the video with cruel captions, twisting my words into mockery and painting me as unstable for the entire online world to see. Mark, standing too close, broke down, tears spilling as he whispered, "Why can't Dad just be fair?" His pain was raw, a wound I felt deep in my chest. That public humiliation, the sting of watching my children suffer because of their father's cruelty, snapped something inside me. The fear, the doubt, the endless running from one battle to the next. It all shattered. I looked at Mark's tear-streaked face and Sophie clutching my hand tightly, their innocence bleeding away in front of me. "No more running," I vowed silently. The woman who had endured every insult and every betrayal was gone. Rising from the ashes was a strategist, cold and clear-eyed. This fight wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about winning. For my kids. For their future. The victim had vanished. A warrior mother was standing in her place, ready to wield truth like a weapon. The house was quiet, dark except for the soft glow of the lamp by the couch where I sat surrounded by the evidence I'd painstakingly gathered. Years of sacrifice, of sleepless nights and whispered promises to my children, weighed heavily on me. I flipped through texts, court papers, and bank statements, each one a reminder of the control and manipulation I'd endured. The pattern was unmistakable. My ex and Linda used money as a weapon, wielded fear like a leash, and twisted every interaction to isolate me. Anger simmered beneath the exhaustion. Anger not just at them, but at myself for staying silent so long. "I've been silent too long," I admitted aloud, the words a bitter awakening. Shame and doubt dissolved, replaced by a fierce clarity. I thought of Mark and Sophie, how their laughter once filled the rooms that now felt heavy with tension and lies. I couldn't let their childhood be stolen by this endless war of control. The years of pain had forged a new resolve inside me. From now on, I fight smart, I promised quietly. Not just for me, but for them. The exhaustion was still there, a dull ache in my bones, but so was a spark, a burning determination that would not be snuffed out. I wasn't simply a mother trying to survive anymore. I was a force to be reckoned with, and I would use every tool at my disposal to protect my children's future. Late that night, I dialed Daniel's number, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "It's time," I said plainly. "I'm done waiting for the court to catch up." I outlined the plan I'd been turning over in my mind for weeks: collect every piece of evidence, expose their lies, and use social media to dismantle the carefully constructed facade Linda and my ex relied on. Daniel's voice was steady, a lifeline in the dark. "We'll hit them where it hurts. The truth and proof," he agreed. For the first time in months, I felt a faint surge of hope. This wasn't just about reacting anymore. It was about taking control. Our first step was clear: document everything. Custody exchanges, missed payments, manipulative texts, and public humiliations. Each would be recorded meticulously. Daniel promised to rally quiet allies, people who believed in justice but needed the right moment to step forward. I felt the cold precision of strategy settling in, replacing the confusion and despair. I was no longer alone. Behind the exhaustion, behind the bruises of endless battles, a plan was forming, a weapon as sharp as any blade. For Mark and Sophie, I would fight, not with tears or desperation, but with calculated strength. The war was far from over, but I was ready. This time, I would win. I sat at the kitchen table, piles of papers spread before me like the pieces of a broken puzzle I was desperate to solve. My ex's claim of unemployment had been the cornerstone of his defense for too long. 2 years without a single cent of child support, while I carried the weight of raising Mark and Sophie alone. But something didn't add up. Late into the night, I cross-checked his statements against tax records I managed to get through Daniel, his social media activity, and the occasional glimpses from neighbors and friends who'd seen him out and about. It was a pattern of carefully disguised lies. His Instagram showed photos of dinners at upscale restaurants, tagged locations in cities far from any job search, and pictures with Linda smiling under the glow of expensive chandeliers. His court filings painted a picture of destitution, but the truth was a stark contrast. He was living lavishly, and I was the one left scrambling to keep the lights on. I hired a private investigator, my last resource before stepping fully into the legal arena with evidence that couldn't be ignored. When the investigator's report came back, it confirmed everything I suspected: frequent trips, luxury purchases, and no sign of the financial hardship he claimed. I printed out bank statements that showed his inactivity in child support payments, screenshots of Linda's social media flaunting their lifestyle, and even a testimonial from a neighbor who'd seen him drive a new car last month. These pieces weren't just evidence, they were weapons. I realized then how much they depended on the court's ignorance and my silence. If I remained quiet, they won. But if I chose to speak, to fight back with these undeniable truths, the whole game could change. For the first time in months, a fierce sense of power surged through me. I wasn't just a victim anymore, I held the leverage. It was terrifying, but it was also the beginning of a new fight. Despite the storm raging inside, I kept my exterior calm. At school, I smiled at my students, answered parents' questions, and tucked Mark and Sophie into bed with gentle goodnights, never letting them see the wheels turning relentlessly in my mind. I spent evenings organizing every shred of proof into meticulous folders, both digital and physical, labeling them clearly: custody exchanges, bank statements, screenshots, witness statements. The folder titled "The Truth" was my secret arsenal, hidden behind layers of passwords on my laptop and locked in a cabinet that no one except me could access. I deleted all traces of my ex from my phone and social media, blocked him on every platform to sever the toxic threads that had kept dragging me down. It felt like I was preparing for battle, not knowing when the first strike would come but ensuring I was ready when it did. My routine didn't waver. I dropped Mark off at school, whispered encouragement to Sophie as she nervously clutched her backpack, and nodded politely at neighbors who'd no doubt heard the rumors but dared not speak. Inside, I was a volcano, quietly gathering strength. The nights were the hardest. When the house fell silent and the facade cracked, I'd sit in the dark, scrolling through Linda's posts, each one a reminder of the gulf between the life I fought for and the one they flaunted. But this time, instead of despair, I felt a cold, calculating resolve. This war was mine to win, and I would not falter. One late evening, while scrolling through Linda's public Instagram, I stumbled on a treasure trove of proof I hadn't anticipated. Vacation photos, countless snapshots of an opulent trip to Hawaii just a few months ago. There was my ex, shirtless on the beach, cocktails in hand, smiling like he had no care in the world. Linda was radiant, posing by infinity pools and luxury resorts with tags naming 5-star hotels and expensive restaurants. I printed every photo, every caption, every tagged location. The cost of that trip alone was staggering, over $8,000, cash spent while he claimed poverty in court filings. My heart pounded as I realized the timing. The next court hearing was just days away. This wasn't just evidence. It was a bombshell that could shatter their lies. I imagined the judge's eyes narrowing, the silence that would fall when the truth was finally laid bare. The thought sent a surge of adrenaline through me, waking something fierce and unyielding inside. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I handed the photos to Daniel the next morning, explaining the urgency. With his help, I filed an emergency motion to reopen the child support case, attaching every piece of evidence. We notified the court clerk and ensured Linda and my ex were formally served with copies. I could almost feel the shock rippling through their carefully constructed world. At the next custody exchange, my ex's usual smirk was replaced with a flicker of panic. He avoided my gaze and skipped answering my texts, retreating behind a wall of silence. But I stayed composed, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me falter. Meanwhile, I blocked Linda's social media accounts and reported her defamatory posts that had been poisoning public opinion against me. The first cracks in their facade had appeared, though they remained dangerously unaware of the storm I was about to unleash. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. For Mark and Sophie, I was ready to fight with every ounce of strength left inside me. The day of Mark's birthday party was a maelstrom of emotions barely held in check. I arranged the backyard with balloons and streamers, Sophie helping me pin the last banner with a shy smile. Guests began arriving. Family, neighbors, a few close friends who still stood by me in these stormy times. The kids ran around, their laughter a precious balm against the low hum of tension I could feel simmering beneath the surface. I had come prepared, clutching a stack of carefully printed photos and court documents that I had turned over 1,000 times in my mind. The Hawaii trip pictures were the centerpiece. Gleaming beaches, carefree faces, expensive restaurants, all stark against the empty ledger of child support payments, every single dollar owed and unpaid. I moved through the crowd quietly, slipping the packets into hands. My sister first, then Daniel, then a few relatives who'd witnessed the chaos unfold, but hadn't known the full truth. Their faces changed as they flipped through the pages, eyes widening in disbelief. When the moment was right, I stepped onto the porch, the chatter dying down as I raised my voice just enough to command attention without shouting. "For 2 years," I said, voice steady, "he claimed poverty while living lavishly with Linda. This isn't just neglect, it's deception." I caught Linda's face, pale, rigid, her lips pressed thin, eyes sharp but unable to deny. My ex moved to interrupt, but a low murmur swept the crowd. Disbelief, shock, disapproval. Witnesses nodded, their expressions silently affirming what I was saying. "My children deserve the truth and support," I continued, meeting eyes around the circle. "And this ends now." The room shifted, the power dynamic flipping. For the first time in years, I held the narrative. The exhausted mother no longer begging for fairness, but standing tall, armed with facts and the fierce resolve of a woman fighting not just for herself, but for the future of her children. The fallout was immediate. Word spread faster than I imagined. Texts, calls, whispers in the school halls. The judge's chambers buzzed with the new evidence, and within days, An emergency hearing was ordered. The court demanded an accounting and payment plan for the back child support, a legal thunderbolt striking my ex's carefully maintained image of hardship. He scrambled, stumbling through explanations, each more desperate than the last. But the truth was laid bare in black and white. Linda's approach shifted from icy detachment to frantic apologies and hollow promises. She flooded my phone with messages claiming remorse, begging for a fresh start, while trying to soften the damage. I ignored every word, every attempt at contact. The walls I built around myself were ironclad. My friends and community rallied, their support a steady light cutting through months of isolation and doubt. Their belief in me was a balm I hadn't realized I so desperately needed. I felt, for the first time in years, a cautious relief. The stranglehold of control was loosening, and with it, the suffocating weight on my shoulders lightened just enough to breathe. My children sensed it too. Mark's protective silence softened into tentative smiles. Sophie's eyes lost some of their wary shadows. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. I was no longer just surviving. I was beginning to regain ground. Yet, as the victory seemed within reach, the attacks escalated. Linda's venom didn't fade with her crumbling facade. It intensified. She sent messages through mutual connections, insidious whispers designed to poison minds and fracture alliances. Texts warning me that this fight would destroy me. Calls in the dead of night with silence on the other end, designed to unnerve and intimidate. Daniel urged caution, advising legal action while offering a steady hand. I filed restraining orders quietly, refusing to give Linda the satisfaction of a public confrontation. Each attempt to break me only deepened her isolation. Her community withdrew, sensing the toxicity she spread. Her power, once so commanding, was now a fragile illusion. I fortified my boundaries with a warrior's resolve. No more cracks, no more openings. The support network I'd painstakingly rebuilt stood firm, a wall of loyalty against her last desperate moves. I refused to waver. I had weathered storms far worse than these petty assaults. My children needed me unbroken, and I was. The exhaustion remained, a dull ache, but beneath it burned a fierce light that no threat could extinguish. Linda's final cards fell flat, her threats empty as the space she now occupied. Alone and defeated. In the quiet aftermath, as the dust settled, I embraced a new chapter, not just of victory, but of peace. The court's orders for back pay and revised custody terms brought tangible relief. But more than that, they brought dignity restored. Mark and Sophie flourished, their smiles brighter, their laughter free from the shadow of conflict. Daniel and I shared a quiet moment of triumph, acknowledging the long, hard road behind us. The battles fought in silence and in courtrooms. Linda withdrew from the community, her influence shattered, a ghost of control fading into obscurity. I looked out at my children playing in the sun, the weight of years lifting from my chest. This fight had been about more than money. It had been about truth, about reclaiming my dignity, about securing a future where my kids could grow without fear or shame. I allowed myself a small, hopeful smile as I planned a simple family outing. Just us, no noise, no shadows. Finally, free from chains I had borne too long, I felt the fierce peace of a warrior mother who had fought alone and won. This was our fresh start, our freedom, and I would guard it with every fiber of my being.